are headed up to the high tunnel. By we, I mean Tazzy, my dog, and I. There is, so the ground is frozen, the garden is put up, and there isn't much for fresh produce this time of year, except from the store. And from the store, it's half rotten. So, anyway, or at least most of the time it is. So what we still have in the garden is the magical vegetable kale. Some of you have commented on various things when I do garden tours and stuff. What do you do with kale? Why would you grow kale? Yeah, how do you use it? And so I thought it would be fun to do a whole video on a few of the ways that we use kale, and just to inform you on how miraculous kale is, how healthy it is for you, and it is like one of the toughest veggies you can grow in these colder climates. So yeah, I'm going to take you up to the high tunnel because there's still kale up there. At this point, it's not growing. It's sort of just in stasis. But the nice thing is when I'm like preserving and trying to get everything up before the ground freezes and all of that, I don't have to worry about the kale. I can come back to the kale really like almost any time. It sort of just stays there, stays fresh. So I will go show you what the kale is doing in the high tunnel, and then I'm going to show you how it's doing in the lower garden. We've harvested a lot of it already to use for various things and to put in the freezer, but there's still quite a bit out there. It is a beautiful cold day here in Alaska. I am at the high tunnel and I'm just coming to scavenge. So I'm coming to scavenge the last bit of kale that's in the high tunnel. So the wonderful thing about kale is that it can freeze and stay in your garden and be like as good, if not better, than when it was growing in the summer. It is the hardiest green I know of, and that's what I love about it. So this time of year, we don't have any more fresh veggies. We're done. You can see here in the high tunnel, there is not anything growing. However, there is kale in stasis that we're gonna just gather up in a basket. I'm gonna get the rest of the kale out of here because there's not a ton left. And I have to say, the one thing that does do kale in is freezing and then thawing, freezing, thawing. That does actually make kale go bad eventually. If you live in a climate where it freezes and snows and then doesn't really like get above freezing again, you can leave kale in the garden all winter long. Just dig it out of the snow. I did it the other day. Here we do a lot of like really, really, really cold and snowy, and then it'll like completely thaw and be way above freezing, and that's really what kale can't handle. So because of that, I do eventually need to get all the kale out of the garden. There's not a lot left in there, and the freeze thawing action happens a lot more in the high tunnel. So when it's sunny out, this high tunnel, even in the winter, gets very warm. But at night, it's just as cold as the outside temperature. So I'm gonna get the kale out of the high tunnel first, and then we're gonna go on a fun little just adventure with kale, showing you a few of my favorite recipes and things to do with kale, because I think that's the key, right? Is finding those really yummy ways to get dark leafy greens in your diet. So this is this incredible kale plant that went to seed. I collected a ton of seeds from it. It is one of my favorite kale varieties, which is a Siberian kale. The name really does kind of give you a clue as to why it's so great. It does really well in cold temperatures, and it grows really prolifically up here. The other thing I love about this kale is that it stays really tender. It doesn't get as tough throughout the year. And then it also sweetens up once it freezes. So that's another trick with kale, is actually leaving it in the garden, letting it freeze, because it actually makes the kale taste better. I feel like it takes some of that bitterness away and adds a little bit more sweetness. Anyway, I'm just getting some of these little baby guys. So you would think this kale would taste bad because it went to seed. A lot of things, when they, like greens in general, when they go to seed, they get really bitter and taste bad. Well, that was not the case with this. Or maybe they're tough. Not the case. These little leaves are so sweet, tender, and amazing, and not tough. So I have already taken a bunch of kale from the garden, and we strip it off the stem, and then just keep the greenery, and we shove it in Ziploc bags and freeze it. You do not have to blanch kale. It's really easy in that way to preserve. Essentially, you just throw it in the freezer. And then what I do with kale throughout the winter, frozen kale, mostly is I put it in smoothies, and I just chop it up finely and put it in pretty much every single soup I make. You chop it up really fine and don't add too much. You can't even tell it's there. Like if you throw it in chili when you're cooking the beans, you'll just never know it's there. Kale is a superfood. This is another reason you want to eat kale. I know it's not everybody's favorite food, but I feel like you can find ways to use it and season it or make salads with it. It can be really good. I personally like the taste of kale. I will just saute it up with, eggs in the morning, and I think that's delicious. If you don't like kale, you are not going to think that's delicious, because you can definitely taste it. Some other fun facts and selling points about kale is that it has a really large amount of calcium in it. Really good for women, children, everybody, but it also has vitamin C, vitamin K, lots of fiber, of course, lots of antioxidants. Oh, it has iron in it as well. Anyway, kale just has an incredible, there's more ways in which it's so good for you. So that's its other selling point. Another way you could use kale that I won't show you in this video is freeze drying it and turning it into a powder that you would use essentially like a supplement, like you dump the powder in smoothies and stuff. So that's another great way to get those dark leafy greens if you're really adverse to them. I find that I can just get away with putting a little bit of frozen kale or fresh kale in a smoothie, and it doesn't have to be all powdered. I can get all this good stuff. All this good stuff. I feel like kale is like the northern equivalent to collards. In the South, people eat a lot of collards. I have actually never had a taste for collards. I've always preferred kale, but I think it's one of those things where you just have to know how to cook it and make it so it tastes good. And I don't know maybe all the best ways to cook collards, and I know more about how to make kale taste good. So, anyway. All right, we got a decent amount out of here. Look at all that bounty. I'm so excited. So now I'm gonna go home and get some more out of our outside garden, and then we'll show you some recipes. Now I'm headed down to the garden below the house to see what kale I can scavenge outside here. So I'll show you that, well, we had like a good maybe 6 inches of snow. Oh yeah? Is it that bad? And most of it melted. So the other day I was out here digging kale out of the snow, which is always kind of funny. But now we're gonna see kind of what's left. Not a lot of it. Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. Love this time of day. Days aren't long, but when they're sunny, they're sure beautiful. Here you go. You can see the snow. There's not much left. But yeah, I have a bunch of this lovely red Russian kale left here. So right here is this lovely red Russian kale. Look at it has frozen water droplets on it. It's so pretty. See, frost on it, but it's still as good as new. And tastes delicious. So I'm gonna pick the rest of this, and then we should have enough to do a couple different salads and stuff. There's not a lot left here, so I will probably just pick the rest of it, get her in, because, you know, some days after a long day, I don't feel like digging my meal out of the snow. Some days that's amusing, and some days that's really annoying. So it's nice when I just have it in the freezer, in the fridge, ready to go. So Sparrow actually grew me this kale plant. It grew so prolifically in her class. It was my Mother's Day present. So they started seeds and she chose this kale to plant for me. So it's kind of fun. I love it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Alrighty. Oh, there's a little bit over here. A little bit more dino kale. This dino kale is really fun. It's like dinosaur skin. A lot of people really like it, but it can get tough. All right. So that is the last of it. I will be digging out of the garden. So yesterday I harvested all that kale, and then look what it's doing now. It is so snowy. Look at how snowy it is out there. Anyway, it is a winter wonderland. It's dumping. I love this. So beautiful. But I am glad I'm not trying to harvest kale in a blizzard. It would have been more entertaining for you guys, but not as much fun for me. So today we're going to make one of my favorite salads. It's a kale salad. It's in my cookbook. It is an incredible fall dish because it incorporates roasted squash. You really can use most any squash of your choosing. One of my favorites for it is delicata squash. The other day I made it with one of my pie pumpkins that I grew because I can't really grow delicatas here very easily. You could use a small acorn squash. It really, about this much squash is what you want. A quite small pie pumpkin. Delicata squash come in all shapes and sizes. I always roast 2 of them because Sparrow loves roasted squash so much. We really all love roasted squash. So if I don't use it all in my salad, I'll just have it on the side and it will get eaten or throw it on something else a different day. I really feel like roasted squash is so delicious. You could just have it around all the time. So I am going to roast 2 delicata squash for today, but like I said the other day, I cubed up a small pie pumpkin and it was delicious. So I personally think this salad is a great one for Thanksgiving. I feel like Thanksgiving can really be lacking in the veggie department, and this is such a hearty salad that's so good for you. And because the kale is so nutrient dense and there's squash in it, it really packs a punch in the veggies department. Christmas dinner also. It really has the fall time feels with the dried cherries or dried cranberries and the roasted, oh my gosh, has roasted pumpkin seeds in it as well. Scooping out the insides. All right, so now we are just going to, we've got the inside scooped out, and we're just going to slice it just in these lovely half moon shapes. You know, try to get them a similar thickness, but it's also not crucial to the mission. So another thing I love about delicata squash, it really makes them easier to use, is you can heat the skin. So any other squash I would recommend, or most other squash, I would recommend peeling them and cubing them. So I feel like delicata squash do take a step out of the process, and that for me is always helpful because I don't know about you, but being a homesteading mama who is not busy and in a hurry and have a million other things to get moving on to, so I'm always trying to figure out how to make a recipe easier, quicker, more streamlined, what steps could be skipped if you're in a hurry. Now you're going to toss these with a few seasonings. We're going to do a little bit of maple syrup. So there is a more exact recipe of all this in my cookbook, which you can get at the Homer bookstore. I am just gonna do what I always do, which my husband loves to make fun of me, and wing it. Because if I don't have to measure, this is another way things can move quicker. Also, I feel like when you're tossing any veggie you're gonna roast, it's really kind of a preference thing, right? And the amount of squash you're gonna have, it's gonna vary slightly. So just feel like with all cooking, you do have to kind of be flexible and use your own judgment. And also like your family's taste, right? So my recipe in my cookbook calls for chili flakes. My kids cannot do chili flakes. Really, my husband can't do chili flakes. It's just the spicier things are, the harder on his intestines. He just can't do as much spicy as he's gotten older. So I just stick with a little bit of Old Bay that has just a little bit of pepper and various peppers and random things in it, I don't know. Instead of, this is kind of what I'm using instead of chili flakes, but keep in mind this has garlic in it, it has a lot of things in it. But this just adds that little bit of spice. My kids like pepper, a little bit of pepper spice, but cayenne and things like that are just a little too spicy. Oh, and then gotta add a few tablespoons of oil. I would have done that first if I was using my brain. It helps the spices stick, and then it'll help with the roasting. Okay. Essentially, you want the, whatever veggie you're roasting to be coated in oil, right? We did olive oil, maple syrup, cinnamon, some Old Bay, because it's just a good classic, some powdered garlic. I have a ton of garlic this year and I want to make more powdered garlic, but for the moment I don't have my own. So once again, it's like if you don't really love cinnamon or want cinnamon on there, don't add it, you know? It's just all personal preference. Oh, I gotta show you something now. Look at this. My Sparrow is taking a ceramics class She made me this ridiculously adorable salt dish with a little spoon and everything. And my friend who came to Prince William Sound with us made sea salt from one of our favorite places in Prince William Sound. So this is sea salt from Prince William Sound and my precious daughter's salt dish. Things just don't get much better than that. Okay. So keep in mind, like, if you use Old Bay, it has a bit of salt in it. There we go. Now, we are spreading this. I like to use parchment paper on my cookie sheet. It just makes it a lot easier to clean and keeps it from sticking. So here is my beautiful squash, all spread out. So I will put it in my 425 preheated oven. I'm sticking my lovely squash in my preheated oven. If you're roasting at 425, you really got to keep an eye on it. It happens fast, especially if you put on convection. Yeah, so I will just keep an eye on those and stir them, flip them around a few times and get them roasted up. But in the meantime, you can work on your dressing and the rest of your salad. All right, so I am working on the dressing now. So you get 1 clove of garlic. I highly recommend doing fresh garlic. If you're in a hurry, by all means do powdered garlic, but I feel like the fresh garlic is key to this really good dressing and just, yeah. This is coming from someone who can like eat raw garlic when I'm sick. So I like things garlicky. At least if I over garlic, Ivan and I can't tell because we're both garlic breath. Okay, so in a lovely mason jar, I actually got these awesome lids for my mason jar so I can, well, do all kinds of things like, you know, whatever you need to pour something and you just stick it on a mason jar. So easy, and then it's ready to go. They're my new favorite thing. Anyway, so I found this incredible Nagoonberry balsamic that my friend made for me. I'm really excited to use it in this, but regular balsamic is just fine. Basically, balsamic is actually very sugary, so I think just running this, hopefully, under hot water will help, oh my gosh, undo it. This is a really good example of why when you're canning, after it's all canned and sealed, you take the rings off because they can like rust themselves onto the jar and like any food seeped out while it, oh, there it is, while it's canning here. But anything, look at this is what happened. Especially with the vinegar, that's gonna just be super corrosive. So look at all that rust in there. That's why it wouldn't open. So yeah, that's why you take the rings off. 2 tablespoons balsamic. 2 tablespoons olive oil. And this says a 1/4 teaspoon soy sauce. Some pepper. This Finley made me this cute thing, little pinch pot. Some maple syrup. 2 teaspoons maple syrup. And the last ingredient is a little mustard. Another 2 teaspoons. I feel like it's good for this salad dressing recipe to use like not just a mild yellow mustard, but something that has a little bit more to it. And then put your lid on and you shake it up and your dressing is ready to go. So when I make this dressing, I usually make a lot more of it because in general it's a really good salad dressing. So you can use it for any salad, and salad dressing really doesn't go bad. So you can make a bunch and just have it for a really long time. So that is ready to go. Now all we have to do is grate some carrots, chop some kale. We're gonna be there and our squash will be done. Now we're just going to grate up some carrot. So I think it calls for like 1 large carrot. That's really up to you. I just wanted to show you guys this wild carrot. It's quite the monster, but I am going to grate up some of this too, a little more than 1 carrot. You need to grate a carrot like this, huh? We gotta process some kale. So you want to take out all the stems. Here is my kale that's all destemmed, and essentially I just and here we go. And you want about 8 cups of kale, which is more or less about that much. Going to toss in carrots, then mixed in. And then what I like to do, so there's a kind of kale salad that is a massage kale salad, and so essentially what I like to do with most of my kale salads, no matter what, just to help break down the kale a little bit, is put a little salt on it and then massage it. So just a little, because I already have, you know, a decent amount of salt from the soy sauce in my dressing. And then I literally just massage it, and it actually helps break down the kale a little bit and softens it up and tenderizes it. And then I'm gonna roast up a few pumpkin seeds. So we are just going to, let's see, so about a 1/2 cup of these guys. So if you're in a hurry, you do not need to roast the pumpkin seeds. It just brings out more of a nutty flavor in them when you do roast them, but it is not crucial. So the other day I didn't have pumpkin seeds, and I just chopped up some pecans and put them in there. It was just as good. So you can use dried cranberries or dried cherries. Just depends on what you have and what you like. But I think a lot of different nuts would be good in here. I think walnuts would be really good. Start turning a little brown and a little roasted. There it is. Now crackle pop. Okay. Turn it off. And then we'll yeah. We are just going to toss up the salad with all these lovely ingredients. We've got pumpkin seeds here, and the dried cranberries, and shake up our salad dressing. Squash it too. There we go. Squash in there. There we go. Add some more squash. You know me, I can't help get my hands in there. So there we go. It's a gorgeous kale salad. Absolutely delicious. I'm gonna give it a try. See how it turned out and what it may need, if anything.